Guys, I think this is going to be the video where I start a full out war on F1. I just get this feeling that it is going to be the case. But welcome everyone to the Singapore Grand Prix review. Welcome to a review of again a race which didn't have much in terms of um, like sort of racing action, or certainly stuff that we could see, but certainly had a lot of drama and a lot of talking points. Sometimes even talking points about stuff that we didn't see, which I'm sure we will get onto. But again, I'm going to flip the script. I had this plan, for those that this is your first time watching. We had this plan where we would like talk about the underappreciated winners, let's say, um, of each Grand Prix, that we'd have a couple of talking points. And every single time I've had that plan that we do it in that order, I keep flipping the script. And this is one of those ones, right? Because I want to start with the rants so that we can get that out of the way, right? And the rant is this. I am going to say from the start, I am a Lewis Hamilton fan. So, of course, my eyes are going to be drawn to Lewis Hamilton. So maybe I was one of the first ones to, amongst the first to spot that was something that was going on. But with about 3 or 4 laps to go after pitting, Hamilton, and apologies if there's any blurriness, you can see Hamilton was really catching up. I mean, he was, I think, 15 seconds behind Leclerc. And with 5 laps to go, he was catching on the back of Leclerc, got past Leclerc, was catching Antonelli, and it looked like Hamilton was going to get a good 5th place. And then, this was happening. I think it was lap 58, still the same. Lap 59 is really challenging. And then the final couple of laps, it dropped to this. Hamilton went from being 2 seconds behind Antonelli to being 43 seconds behind Antonelli. In fact, it was even worse than that, because this shows him being 7 seconds ahead of Alonso by the time that Piastri crossed the line, and he ended up only being 0.7 seconds ahead of Alonso. So something clearly happened to Hamilton, right? But what was the reason? What was the reason? Well, let's see if we can find out the reason. No, not that. I know Roscoe passing away was really sad, and but I want to see the reason behind what happened with Hamilton. So can you show me what happened with Hamilton? No, I don't want to see the partners of the drivers in the garage. Just show me what was going on with Hamilton. We didn't see it. We didn't see it. And actually, if you're just talking about things that you might have casually seen, at most, you might have just about seen this. A confirmation that Hamilton got a 5-second penalty. A full-on meltdown and rant of Alonso, the guy that just lost out to Hamilton on the track. And maybe a cheeky little radio from Hamilton saying he had no brakes. That was it. That was the very limit of what we saw. Now, I don't mean to be funny. This was clearly a big story, big talking point, big action that was happening on the track. And you had to dig to find it. This is the thing that drives me nuts about Formula One TV, because we, for whether growing up with Formula One from being a kid, or maybe you've joined during the Drive to Survive days, we're all having a bit of a similar problem here, right? First things first. I mean, I'm going to start from if you've grown up watching Formula One, and then we'll bring the Drive to Survive fans along the way here, right? And let's say you grew up like I did in the 90s and the 2000s, watching Formula One with the family. Maybe you're even further back than that, and you watched it during the 80s and the 70s, right? Watching Formula One, especially in the UK, I don't know what it was like elsewhere. It was a free to air thing. Now, you watched it either on ITV, where basically you didn't pay for it at all apart from ads, or on the BBC, where you just paid a TV license, right? And that was great, and it was popular and everything like that. And then he went behind a paywall in terms of then joining Sky. So that's when we start bringing in the Drive to Survive. But at the very least, you saw everything that was going on. But now, to be able to see what is going on, you would actually have to physically put some action in to go and see, go and do the onboard of the driver. Because that's the thing that Sky is selling. Sky Now TV, F1 TV, that's the thing they're selling, the opportunity to see the onboard of whoever. So you would look at the timing towers and then you could choose Hamilton and choose Alonso and see what is going on. I don't mean to be funny. That shouldn't be our job, right? We are all customers of Formula One, whether that's through a separate TV deal or anything like that. At the end of the day, F1 is being paid by Sky or whatever provider is in your area, and we are paying them, those TV providers, or we're paying F1 TV directly. For that reason, we shouldn't have to put in the work to find out the action that's going on the track. That's your job. And we're in this situation where it is bizarre that very few people will have actually seen this incident live. That is ridiculous. And I don't know what it is, right? We did a few little memes, that the camera's almost like ADHD, distracted by one thing or another. But that is doing a disservice to those with ADHD, because I potentially am one of those ones with ADHD, and I could see what was going on. The entire last lap, I was raging at the screen, not because Hamilton was falling back, but because I didn't know the reason why Hamilton was falling back. And literally every single mini sector where Hamilton was dropping 2 seconds per mini sector to Leclerc, I was like going, show Hamilton, show Hamilton, show Hamilton, just the entire time. And it's getting to this point where I am just frustrated that no one is gonna do anything about it. We were talking about, it needs to improve from the Monaco days and the Lance Stroll and everything like that. If anything, we've brought the Monaco TV directors to us. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. And how are we at this point? Right now, if I was the Stefano Domenicali, person in charge of F1, I'd be taking a strong look at the camera situation. Are there particular contracts? Have they got to fulfill a contract that they've got to show the championship contenders no matter what? Have they got a contract that they can only show an action that's happening if drivers are within a second of each other? Have they got a contract that they've got to show certain individuals showing the race? Which, by the way, the thing of showing the drivers' partners, I'm not entirely sure the drivers' partners want to be shown during a race. Right? This is not like any other sport where you have pauses and replays and big gaps between action where you can focus on other things. The race is constantly going on. It only ends when the final car crosses the line. It feels wild. Let me try and put it to you another way, right? I need to imagine you're watching a football match. Your favourite team is playing. They are attacking, pushing for the winning goal. And all the action is happening on the left-hand side of your screen. And the camera's focusing on the goalkeeper, furthest right, on his own, standing. You'd want your money back. You'd be like going, are you joking right now? I'm paying to see the action. Give me the action. If I'm looking at it from a common sense point of view, this incident or situation, this last lap, was so severe that at the very least, Hamilton's car should have shown quickly on the big screen. The battle for second should have been in a mini box. A quick snap showing that the Ferrari's struggling, and then a switch between Alonso and Hamilton, like going, Alonso could catch Hamilton here, Alonso could catch Hamilton here, all the way through. Because that was where the drama was. That was where the situation was. And barely any of us saw it. And this is the thing. If it was free television, I'd be a little bit less ragey about it. But everyone is forking out a ridiculous expense every year to be able to watch these races live. And yeah, we're seeing the event live, but we're not seeing the racing live. In fact, I think we didn't see a single pass live. Ollie Behrman passed Alex Albon, daring overtake into the chicane. We only saw that through a replay. Antonelli dived down the inside of Charles Leclerc to take fifth place, an absolute demon move from Antonelli, and we only saw it through a replay. This needs sorting out big time, and I don't know how it gets fixed. As a side point here, in terms of the Ferrari situation, how have they built a car that can't last a race? Because it's not just this race. They've built a car that cannot be put in its optimum position because of the plank. The tyres seem to start so well and then fade so quickly. I like this thing of the car just not coming. What is going on? Yeah, this feels almost as painful as Vettel's last year at Ferrari. Like this sort of cannot get anything right at all, and it needs sorting big time. But let's flip the other side. The guy that ended up getting past Hamilton through penalties and everything like that in Fernando Alonso, because it's time to talk about the unsung heroes. And Alonso was one of those. If you were looking at I think it was the first day, the practice sessions, you would have thought Aston Martin are going to be in the top 10 easily. And then you looked at the Saturday and thought, oh, they're going to struggle big time. And Alonso did amazing. Was probably the driver making the most amount of moves. The move on Hadjar, which we did see live, actually. Fair play for F1. You did one thing right. Fantastic from Alonso. Ollie Behrman as well. And I think Alonso got into Q3 as well. Ollie Behrman came out from nowhere to get into the top 10. And actually, the qualifying was amazing. His race is normally pretty good, and again, it showed. I think was it a ninth place in the end for Ollie Behrman. Really strong race. And even though he won, I do think he is underappreciated in George Russell. We had the opportunity to watch the end of qualifying live on twitch.tv/the ND Ninja. And due to like sort of scheduling and everything like that. And there was a lot of talk of like going, the Ferraris could steal the pole, could back to Verstappen do it, whoever the McLarens could do it. And I remember looking up when George Russell crossed the line for the first time in the qualifying and getting pole and actually going, where on earth did that come from? Seriously, where did that come from? He absolutely dominated that race. Yes, there was a time when Verstappen was like sort of 3 seconds behind George Russell. For the most part, George had it all in the bag. Absolutely brilliant. That is the type of performance you like to see. And I don't think, look, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was a single close call scrape against the walls or anything like that we saw with Lando Norris last year, right? This, in a city track, was perfect performance from George Russell. And I don't think, with everything that's going on around George, I don't think it's being spoken about enough. Brilliant from George Russell. And if Mercedes get their act together and, they're normally good in power circuits, George Russell looks like a decent bet for championship contender next year. I mean it. We know what Mercedes can be like if they really focus on, technical directives and, new formulas and everything like that. George is a shout for, an early shout for world champion 2026. In fact, I might even call it. It could happen. So brilliant from these guys. Now we come to the final talking point, which let's start with the positives. Congratulations, McLaren. 2 years in a row in winning the Constructors' Championship. And I have to say, if we're going to focus on the positives from McLaren here, let's start off with the fact that, 2 years ago, we were in a situation at the start of Bahrain where I think both drivers were doing like 5 pit stops, and like Piastri was having to reset his steering wheel, and they were like 3 or 4 laps behind everyone else. They were very much a work in progress. In fact, probably since 2009, 2010, they were on such a downward course. It was almost like watching Williams again. Williams going from being this dominant force to slowly dropping down to the point where they were at the back of the field. And you were almost like going, is this going to be the new normal for McLaren? So the fact that they've turned it around and ended up winning 2 Constructors' Championships in a row, fantastic work from McLaren. So let's start off with that. As a team, they have performed amazingly in building brilliant cars. But I don't think I've seen a Constructors' Champion criticised as much as McLaren. Sure, we've had the situation with Ferrari, Schumacher, and Barrichello, where they had their criticism for the team orders that didn't need to happen, or McLaren 2007, where there was team orders or team instructions and team strategy that happened in Monaco, or the situation between Alonso and Hamilton in, was it Hungary? Yeah, I think it was Hungary or Turkey, one of the two. Or Red Bull with Verstappen and Webber. Or Mercedes with Rosberg and Hamilton. Or Ferrari with Alonso and Massa. All those situations. And yet, McLaren, for the sheer act of basically trying not to be the controversial team, they've ended up potentially being the most controversial constructors champion I've ever seen. They've tied themselves up in knots, and it's crazy that every innocent incident seems to be adding an extra layer to it. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that social media is as strong as it is, and the fact that we are based. This is the first time that social media has been as strong as it is with two teammates for the same team. We've had the toxic social media when it came to Hamilton and Verstappen, but they were on different teams, or Verstappen and Norris, but again, they're on different teams. This is the first time we would have seen a, a sort of drivers' championship battle between the same team where social media is as strong as it is. But even so, it feels like McLaren have just absolutely dropped the ball with the drivers' championship. And you don't want to, if you're trying not to be controversial, you're trying not to show favoritism, you're not going about it the best way. First things first, this was innocent in terms of they managed to walk past Lando Norris, who was the last one to go off the podium as they were coming on. Piastri had already gone. But even so, if they said, Lando, come with us, why did no one go, hold on, where's Oscar? Lando, it's probably best that you don't come with it, right? Because even if you are showing favoritism to someone, you don't want everyone to know it. But all of this is basically going on in the background. And look, we don't know the conversations that are happening in the background, but this very much feels like the start of Webber 2.0, not bad for a number 2 driver that Oscar Piastri is going to have. Like, the very first thing I thought of, and I couldn't find it, which is the reason why I haven't put it in this video. The very first thing I thought of when I saw Oscar Piastri's comments on the radio, the seeming displugging of the radio and disconnecting the radio, was it was an incident that I think it was like a qualifying or something like that. Vettel got ahead of Webber and showed a bit of favoritism, maybe. And they were at a press conference. They had the water, glasses of water, and I just remember Webber making a big point of drinking from the glass and slamming it down on the table. And it feels like Piastri's now in this situation of, do you know what? Screw you guys. I'm fed up with this. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen, from Austin onwards. But I get the feeling that Oscar is going to be in the situation where he's like, I'm done trying to play the team game. What are we going to see in the future? Are we going to see Piastri do a repeat of what he did when it came to the Alpine contract, and we end up seeing a full-on Twitter meltdown? At the end of the season, basically going, I will not be driving for McLaren at the end. I don't know. It's mad what's going on. But McLaren wanted so much to show equalness for both drivers, but they laid on so many layers to that made it almost impossible for it to be fair. Those previous instances that I spoke about, right? The, with the exception of Ferrari, right? The Rubens Barrichello Michael Schumacher's situation, because that was clearly team orders. And actually, to be honest, Alonso Massa, although then again, for Alonso Massa, you could make the argument as to the reason why they would show favoritism to Alonso. But let's pass all those by. When we look at the McLaren 2007, the focus of like the sort of rage is on Hamilton and Alonso, not on the team. Why? Because the team let them race. And any fights that, little controversies and everything like that was meant to be dealt with in the background. In fact, it was only because Alonso wanted to make it public that it would become bigger issues, including Spygate, to be quite honest. You look at the Red Bull situation. Red Bull did their very best to try and let the drivers race and show a little bit of settling down. But actually, the one time they put the rule down, the multi 21, it got disobeyed. And guess what? It looked like they were showing favouritism to Vettel. Then you go to the Mercedes situation, the let them race, and it really was a let them race. And it was dangerous, but guess what? All of the heat was thrown at the drivers, at Rosberg, at Hamilton. No one was questioning Toto Wolff's leadership and going, you probably need to calm it down a little bit. That's what McLaren should have done. If they wanted to do this the right way, they could have looked in the past and gone, right, when has been the times that the focus has not been on the team but has been on the drivers? They could have drawn on their own history. Senna, Prost. No one has a go at McLaren for Senna, Prost. They have a go at Senna, and will they have a go at Prost? You know what I mean? McLaren didn't need to do anything special to look like they were being equal to both drivers, because the playbook of how to do that has already been done. McLaren tried to do something unique and special and different. In any case, it almost feels like all of the rhetoric surrounding McLaren is they're favouring Lando. I don't know if it's true, but that seems to be the entire rhetoric, and McLaren have dropped the ball on that. But those are my thoughts anyway, in terms of McLaren, in terms of the whole, all of the incidents in the Singapore Grand Prix. Like I say, congratulations to McLaren for the Constructors' Championship, because that is a lot of hard work that's come good. And now all the focus is on the Drivers' Championship. And it all starts again in a little under 2 weeks at Austin, the US Grand Prix. Probably one of the coolest Grand Prix in terms of its elevation, in terms of its layout. It almost feels like a best of circuit. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens, seeing what drama comes of it. Will Verstappen continue his comeback? Will Norris continue to, bring Piastri in? Will Piastri enter his villain arc? Will something crazy happen further back? We don't know, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. And until next time, guys, when we all get to find out what happens, take care of yourselves.